Guys, it is Megan here, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior. I am here again in Gravenhurst at my son's place where he lives with his girlfriend. And it is a windy, wet day. Shocking. So today, I know I made a little short earlier about gluconeogenesis and why it is so incredibly important. This is a little bit more in depth. And it's just a reminder of how amazingly God has made our bodies to function, that we can have all these things going on. We don't have to think about it. It happens automatically. And it's just, to me, it just further confirms that God is out there. He's amazing. We are his creation, and it's powerful and it's incredible. And yet, how well our bodies can function. If we allow them to function the way that they were meant to function, how powerful that could be. Which brings me to gluconeogenesis. Okay, so Genesis would refers to the forming of something new. So, sorry, neo, I believe, is Greek, meaning new. Genesis is the formation or creation of something. So, creating something new. And the glucose part referring to creating glucose in our bodies because that is what our brains need to function. And it's always been long taught, as long as we've had food guides since the 70s, it has been taught that in order to get the glucose our brains require, we must consume that glucose in the form of carbohydrates. Because, for those who don't know, when carbohydrates are broken down through metabolism in our bodies, they release glucose molecules. And those are the things that fuel the brain and provide us with energy. I'm wanting to point out that actually that isn't true. Sorry, carbohydrates do break down and release glucose into the blood. That is true. What I'm saying is we don't actually have to eat carbohydrates. In other words, we don't have to eat dietary sources of glucose to fuel our brains. And when we do that, our brains use up glucose very quickly. They require high amounts of energy. And so, therefore, that's partly why we might constantly feel like we will eat let's say, some cereal in the morning, and then within an hour or two later, we feel like we need to eat more. We need to constantly eat carbohydrates to keep fueling our brains. The reality is, if we were to eat zero carbohydrates ever, our bodies are designed to actually use the um, things that we store in our cells, the protein enzymes and fats, as triglycerides, for example. Um, those things are actually then broken down and can then form new glucose in the body. In other words, we don't need to eat sources of glucose in order to make glucose. Our bodies are designed so that if we don't have any uh, carbohydrates or dietary sources of glucose, it can make the glucose the brain requires through gluconeogenesis. Now, in order for the protein molecules and the fat molecules in the bodies to be released, our insulin levels must be at a fairly low state, and therefore the glucose levels in our blood glucose levels, need to be very low as well. Because if they're too high, and therefore if insulin is too high, um, our bodies will not release those other molecules. The fat and proteins will not be released as long as the blood glucose levels are showing as high. In other words, if we have high levels of glucose in the blood and in the body, that's going to feed the brain. So there's no trigger mechanism to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to make more because we don't have enough right now. So the only way that our bodies will get triggered to release the proteins and the fat cells or the fat molecules is if our blood glucose levels are kept at a low level, right? Because what will happen is whatever we have used in the brain, the levels go down, and the body is then automatically signaled to release the fats and the proteins to then form glucose through gluconeogenesis. But as long as we continuously eat carbs, therefore, dietary sources of glucose, that particular function doesn't take place. And I thought it was so amazing because I know one of the things I've been asked, or that people have said to me who are very carb based, in other words, maybe primarily plant based, would be yes, that our bodies plants provide edible plants break down into glucose, and our brains need glucose to survive. This is true. Our bodies do require glucose to survive. However, we do not have to eat glucose sources for that to happen. And so when people ask me, don't I worry about brain function being on a carnivore diet? Because I do not eat any form of plant. I don't. None. What about the glucose? Brains and glucose. To which I can say, yes. The body is very intelligent. And so when it reaches, if it gets to that threshold where it realizes it's getting low on the glucose to feed the brain, if I don't eat carbohydrates, it will take the fat molecules and the protein, which I would have, say, broken down and then stored for future usage. That then gets released through gluconeogenesis. Glucose is then formed, and that then feeds the brain. I mean, how amazing is that? How incredible is that? That God made our bodies that intelligent. And if we were to step back and allow our bodies to provide all the glucose it required through gluconeogenesis instead of overfeeding it dietary glucose, just when we get out of our own way, our body functions exactly the way it should. In other words, when I was constantly eating carby foods, and for me that was things like whole wheat toast and lots of vegetables, loads of fruit, so getting fructose and glucose dietary sources, I was getting in too much glucose and causing that it actually led towards causing inflammation in the brain instead of healing of the brain. Because I thought, in my defense, I didn't know any better, but I thought I knew the best, right? We all do. Like, oh no, this is good. We need glucose for the brain. Yes. However, only a small percentage of the glucose we eat is used, and the rest of that then gets stored as dangerous body fat, which can obviously cause other issues as it fills up and surrounds our organs. And as long as we keep glucose levels in our blood are kept high, driving an insulin response, our bodies will hold on to those fat stores and not release them to be used for future reference. So the more carbs and therefore dietary glucose food sources we consume, more of it gets converted to and stored as fat in the body, and that leads to high insulin levels, and that of course contributes towards insulin resistance, diabetes, that can lead towards developing heart issues, etc. I just find it so fascinating that if we were to step back and actually allow our bodies to make just the glucose it needs through gluconeogenesis instead of constantly overfeeding it dietary sources of glucose, it actually functions that much better. I guess it would be kind of like when you take your car and you have to put fuel in it. You fill it up with what it needs, it runs great. If you try to overfill your tank, you get fuel leaking and spilling, and then you waste your money because it's not going anywhere, and you're not making your car run any better by overfilling the tank. In fact, you can cause damage to the inside of your car if you're continuously trying to overfill your fuel tank. fact, the same thing can happen with your brain function. If you are constantly giving more dietary glucose to your body than it requires, you're not helping it. And in fact, you could be causing extensive long-term damage. However, you step back and you stop doing those things. Wow, isn't it amazing? The body functions exactly the way it was designed to by our great creator. It doesn't, we don't need to assist it. In fact, our bodies are incredibly well designed and well made. And who are we as humans to think that we can somehow make them better through our ideas versus letting the body function the way it was meant to? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Anyways, I just thought this is such a cool and incredible thing. I wanted to just make a slightly longer version. So again, if you are not yet carnivore or keto or even low carb, but you're thinking about it, I wanted to share this information because, again, often one of the first thoughts is, but our brains need glucose to function. Yes, the brains do require a certain amount of glucose to survive. However, even if we were to deprive it of all sources of dietary glucose to carbohydrates, that would not be an issue because our brains will get exactly the amount it requires and nothing more, enough of it to function and be healthy from our bodies. If we allow it to make its glucose from the protein and the fat sources that are already in us, it will get exactly what it needs, no more than that, and the rest of our bodies will heal as well. So we don't actually need carbohydrates for brain function or any other form of health. We don't require it. And that's reassuring. I would have thought too, if you're considering going low carb, keto, ketovore, carnivore, or even to the extreme end of carnivore on the Lyme diet, that you're worried about this, you don't have to be. The body is amazing, and if we step out of our own way and away from our own hubris and allow the body to function the way God designed it to, it will actually work the way it's supposed to work, which is reassuring. Okay, that whatever we may have done to it in the past, we can actually heal from if we step out of our own way, so to speak. I had to do that, definitely. Okay. Anyways, guys, that was it. It was just some super cool information I wanted to share with you guys. I hope that's helpful. I hope that you find that information helpful and useful. There are some great videos out there. Dr. Ben Bikman, Professor Ben Bikman, he is a specialist. He speaks a lot to the effects of insulin and its role in diabetes and how to overcome that. Very scientifically minded, very as far as the scientific cellular breakdown of things, as is my favorite, Professor Bart Kay. They have great videos about all of this. If you want more scientific details, if you're like me and you need a little bit more of just an everyman approach or every woman approach to this, I hope that's helpful. But definitely check out their stuff. These guys are amazing, and their videos, their content is really, really great. That's it for today. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. I will be back hopefully tomorrow with more content, or if not, the day after. But I will be back very soon with more information for everybody. Take care. Love you guys. Appreciate all your support. That's it for now. Bye.